Okay, so here we are in Arc Raiders. We are on the 1X Super. I have the 1X Super V, and I have the 1X Super X. The Super X I did already a couple days ago, the same part, and then I have the Super V. That was a loaner, this is mine. So we're going to sync these up and we're going to see how the performance is under the exact same scenario here. The cool thing is now we can compare Panther Lake B390 to AMD's best, the 8060S, in the same thing, the same device, which is not very common, to be honest, to find essentially the exact same device with especially like iGPUs. You can do it, like it's not impossible, but a lot of the times you don't find the same devices, which can then make comparisons. You can still do it, but they're not necessarily as precise or accurate because you have a lot of variation. Whereas here we have even the same like control program. Like all this stuff is going to be the same. The BIOS is going to be roughly the same. There are, of course, going to be differences between how power and stuff is managed, all kinds of stuff. So here we are. We're at 65 watts. We're going to do wattage testing here more than anything. We're going to get the settings set up here. I have my footage for the other device here, the Super V, and you'll see it on the side. So we're going to come in here and we're going to set them exactly the same. The one difference here, though, Intel has access to Intel XeSS, so does AMD, but when Intel uses XeSS, it does actually get a performance boost. That's just the way that it is. So we're going to use XeSS here. We're going to use FSR on AMD. You can use XeSS on AMD, but you won't get the performance boost. So it'll look better. XeSS generally looks better than FSR 3.1. AMD iGPUs do not have access to FSR 4, so it's moot. You can maybe like force it into games, but it doesn't perform the same. So anyways, so the same internal rendering resolution here, 1060 on both of them here. And then, we're going to be on dynamic medium for lighting, and we're going to be on high for graphical presets there. All right. Just be aware, when you look at AMD versus Intel scaling, XeSS versus FSR, they're not named the same. Quality is equal to balanced on AMD, but the rendering resolution there is what matters, right? What it's actually rendering in the game is what matters here. So we'll start off with peak wattages here, and we'll see where we can go. Now this doesn't necessarily, they measure a little different. On AMD it'll show up higher. Intel measures them a little bit slightly different, just be aware of that. So it'll appear a little different. It's not actually pulling 27 watts, it's pulling more. And actually, and I'll just point this out here. We're at peak watts here, and you can just see here we're pulling 58. It's always a little lower on Intel. So like it's not actually pulling 65, just so you know. Like if you go like that and you go down to 55. So interestingly, in gaming, going above 55 doesn't actually do anything. You can see there. So that's going to be our peak here. We can add more, 55, but it doesn't actually add more. It will if you're doing video like Cinebench or something like that. It will actually make a difference, but just so you know, 65 watts doesn't seem to do anything. It just peaks at 55, which is fine. I mean, that's fine. So 55 is what we get over here, and we'll just match that up to AMD's best because we're going to do best for best right now, and we'll see what we can get on both of them. Okay, so best for best, when everything's maxed out, AMD is ahead, obviously. It's pulling 60, 65, and then, Intel is pulling, it can peak at about 55 in games. It doesn't seem to go any higher. And we'll go down a little bit here, just a little bit. Again, these numbers won't necessarily make sense over there, but we can watch the slider. Okay, so AMD is a little bit ahead here. We can come down to 40 now. Now at this point, AMD is now behind, or close. It's both close. So 40-ish around there. They're very, very similar. 45, I believe Intel will be slightly behind, ever so slightly behind at 45 watts. It's actually ahead. So 45 watts, actually, it looks like Intel may be technically ahead here. That's interesting. Okay, so we'll go back up to 50 here, which is technically where I think Intel actually falls behind a little bit, behind AMD. So from what I'm seeing here, they meet up at about probably, it's hard to say exactly, but it seems like they meet up around 45 to 50 in that range, maybe like 47 they seem to match up. And at that point, AMD you can add more and it does a little bit more. Intel doesn't seem to do anything after that, which is interesting. That's actually higher than I thought. They would actually meet. Okay, so now we're going to go down to slightly lower settings. So we'll come down here. We'll go down to medium. We'll turn this down to low, like that. And we'll try a much lower watt now. So we'll go all the way down to 30. So they're both at 30 now. Okay. And so now at this point, Intel is significantly ahead. It's going to jump around a little bit here. We'll see. So we're going to go down because we're turning down to 30 watts now. So low here, medium, so we drop those settings down by 1. We are also going to turn up the scaling by 1. So that's 900, and that's the same on Intel versus AMD. Okay. And so now we'll see where we're at here with this lower setting, a little bit lower setting, a little bit more scaling, still very, very respectable, to be honest. However, we're also at much lower watts, right? And so now we can see there is a gap. There's a gap here all of a sudden. Pretty significant gap for for Intel over AMD, like quite a bit. And we can actually go on battery here. So we're actually going to pull the power here. Okay, we're going to pull the power like that because I want to make sure we're on battery for both, see if there's any difference. Okay, so now we're at just 25 watts on the slider there. And it's a pretty significant gap here at 25 watts. And then we can go a little bit lower as well, down to 20. So if you're in a big gaming laptop, right, with one of these things and you're plugged in, whatever, it doesn't really matter, then I guess it doesn't really matter. I mean, the AMD one is going to have more power when you unlock that profile and you just go all the way up. But on handhelds, these type of devices, Intel is able to pull ahead very significantly at lower watts, like 20, 25, these type watts. It's way ahead. And even when they match up around 40 or so, 40, 45, somewhere around there, they seem to be very comparable to one another there. And that's where it's interesting. I personally thought it would be lower. I thought Intel wouldn't gain the lead until you went even lower than that. I thought you'd really have to start to crank things down quite a bit to start almost challenging the system to some degree, where you're really going to be slamming it quite a bit. But it does seem to be that they're actually matching up at a significantly higher wattage than I thought they would. So yeah, so here we are at 1200p all of a sudden. Okay, we'll go like that there. We'll turn it down even further. So now we're on. And then here we can see once again, huge gap for Intel, 30 frames higher, 30, 35 frames higher. The lows aren't massively better. They're good on both, to be honest, but the actual FPS is significantly higher. Better frame times, just generally running better, of course, at these very low watts. And AMD's really starting to choke now, all the way down to 15. And AMD is way behind now. Way, way, way behind. Much worse frame times. Much worse just general performance. Around half, not quite. As you can see on Intel, it's a very playable experience, very enjoyable. On AMD at this point, these lower watts, it's going to be very problematic. The reason I'm testing these is, you may be on battery, right? And on a system like this, you're on battery. You're not pulling very many watts on a system like this. You're able to game for a lot of time. If you're on a plane or a train or something, or traveling or in a coffee shop, you're going to be able to game for hours and hours and hours. And this is a tablet, so I mean, it is still something you would take with you and game like that for sure. But these are also potentially, reflective of handhelds. So if they come out with an Apex 2 or something like that, and all of a sudden, or Apex I or something, whatever it is from Intel, and all of a sudden it's an Intel-based one, then you're going to be suddenly, considering, do you want that extra peak performance that you can get of the AMD model, or are you potentially going to be happier with Intel, where you can get significantly more battery life and better performance potentially at the lower.